And many of you know Tom. He's our amphibian expert here at KEC, and he's taught many of us the importance of amphibian ecology in our local ecosystems. And here's Tom.
I don't need the microphone. I got asked by my fellow faculty members to please move down the hall, move your class down the hall, because they didn't like how loud it was. All right, I'm here, as Marion has suggested, for the frogs and the salamanders and what's happening to them, not only in Kitsap County, but across the country. This is the arborwood devastation on the east side of North Kitsap Heritage Park. Obvious loss of habitat, obvious catastrophic decline in wildlife in these areas. No terrestrial form of wildlife less than a pound survived that activity. Amphibians and small mammals in particular were devastated by that project. Everything else was dehomed and is now showing up in the yards and development around that area. We complained, the stewards of North Kitsap Heritage Park complained because that devastation led to siltation of Beaver Creek and Beaver Pond in North Kitsap Heritage Park. They issued, the commissioners issued a stop work order while they rebuilt their silt pond and reduced to some degree the silt that was getting into the park. Well, I'm here to talk about pond building in an effort to save the amphibians, which are in global decline. We've lost 2,400 out of 5,700 species globally. That's almost half the amphibians on the planet are already gone. Now, I'm here to talk about pond building in an effort to reverse that trend. The literature supports pond building as a method for regenerating amphibian populations. We've seen this everywhere from Switzerland to Missouri. The building of ponds enables amphibian populations to persist. One of the problems locally when you try to argue for the preservation of amphibians in light of what's going on in Kitsap County is the response by developers is, well, that salamander is not listed, that frog is not listed. And you may know that they only list an animal as endangered when there are about 10 left. That flies in the face of the genetics of this issue, which means that you've reduced the population so small the genetic variability is not there, and there is an increased chance that they're going to disappear entirely. Well, first question, if you're talking about building ponds, is it legal? I can't answer that question. I've been invited to see and have seen about a half a dozen ponds built by citizens in North Kitsap County. Not one of them has asked for a permit, but I don't want to tell you to go out and dig a pond without consulting the relevant authorities. If you live in a neighborhood or have neighbors who are into this as well, then you can have a cooperative effort at building ponds. In addition to legal, where on your property do you want to build ponds? Natural swales, low areas, opportunistic depressions, the side of your driveway. They don't have to be very big. A pond the size of this table will support an amphibian several amphibian populations, salamanders and frogs included. All right, next slide, please. The devastation at Arborwood was not limited to what you just saw. This is a silt fence required by construction regulations hereabouts. It's a plastic fence set in the ground to prevent muddy water from getting to the other side of the fence. In this case, this fence, a couple hundred yards long, was not in the area you just saw. It was several hundred yards away to protect North Kitsap Heritage Park after all the stewards had complained about the siltation issue. And so their response was to put this fence in. This was a disaster and is emblematic of the problems facing amphibians. No amphibian, this is a rough-skinned newt, named obviously for the nature of its skin. In 2018, a few years back, these animals, these amphibians, were obstructed in their migratory journey, trying to get to their breeding ponds. The word got out. The good citizens of Kingston coordinated an effort to save these animals. Some 500 salamanders and frogs were found stranded on the sides of this, on the bad side of this fence, trying to get to their reproductive areas. About half of them died. I'm not going to show you the photographs, but disarticulated frogs with the eggs that they spent a year developing scattered on the ground because they couldn't get by this fence and predators attacked them. Happily, about half of them were picked up by a group of citizens who were concerned and came to the park, came to this area, and lifted them over the fence. We can't do that every year. There are better ways to do this. We used to use straw bales as silt protection. We don't do that anymore. Next slide, please. There were about there's about 500 that were affected. Where do salamanders and frogs breed normally? Forested ponds. This is what we call an ephemeral pond. It's there only in the wet portion of the year. You can see the trees growing out of it. This is a forest that happens to have a depression that fills with water that lasts for a long enough time for salamanders and frogs to reproduce. There's one exception, by the way. There is another salamander that looks like that newt that is the same color but has a smooth skin. That's not a pond dweller. So I have left that out of the story here. Next slide. Natural ponds attractive to amphibians include beaver ponds. This is obviously a beaver chew, and you can see the pond beyond it. Not a very good photograph, but it illustrates the fact that it is these ephemeral ponds, temporary ponds, intermittent ponds, they're sometimes called. Amphibians don't do well reproducing in ponds that contain fish because their larvae have no protection. The tadpoles and salamander larvae cannot withstand the predation pressure of fishes, so fishless areas are best for them. Next slide. Another sort of, there are natural ponds and then there are constructed ponds. There are constructed ponds that are inadvertent. This is a typical inadvertent man-made pond. That's a tire track. On Beaver Ridge Trail, if you've been to North Kitsap Heritage Park, you may have gone up Beaver Ridge Trail. Up at the top there's a curve, and on the inside of the curve, the haul trucks that habitually hauled wood out of there created this pond. I found it a long time ago, investigated it, counted about 50 salamander larvae growing in a 30-foot long, 6-inch deep, 2-foot wide pond. This is not very big, but it served those salamanders well. Next slide. I went back the next year to see who returned to this pond to reproduce, presumably the larvae that had metamorphosed and gone out and spent the year in the woods, and then go back to the only pond they ever knew, which was this one. A concerned citizen, worried about the flooding of the trail, had dug a trench across the trail and drained that pond. So that whole group of salamanders that came out the year I saw it have no pond to go back to. If you're 7 inches long, it's hard to find a pond in the woods. The natural, evolutionarily derived tactic is to go back to the pond that produced you. If it's not there, then that genetic strain is gone. Next slide. We also build ponds for stormwater control. This is obviously number 509 and 510 on the east side of North Kitsap Heritage Park. These kinds of ponds, this is a disaster in the making for amphibians. They're referred to in the ecological literature as ecological traps, meaning they induce salamanders and frogs to enter these ponds. They don't have any problem with the fence, to enter these ponds for reproductive purposes. The problem is that these ponds are designed for infiltration. They want the water, the folks who designed them, they want the water to contribute to the groundwater. And so it's designed in a way that causes infiltration, not retention. What happens is hundreds, and I have photographs of this as well, hundreds of frogs and salamanders entered this pond, deposited, reproduced, bred, and deposited eggs, and then the pond dries before the eggs can hatch or before the larvae can metamorphose. Again, I have some real unpleasant pictures of hundreds of glistening frog eggs laying in the sun in this drying pond. There are better ways to do this. I've tried to bring this point to the county with mixed results. Next slide. This is a better way to design a flood control pond. Some of you may be familiar with these ponds. They're on Barber Cutoff, fairly near the elementary school out there. Natural slopes, emergent vegetation, natural bottom, forested around the edges, an attractive place for amphibians to breed, and that water lasts long enough. Next slide. This is Abby Emenegger from the United States Geological Survey. She and I seined this pond just to see what was in it. She has a purpose in doing this. Among others, we found green frogs. Now, those of you who are concerned about invasives, relax. Green frogs are here. They're going to stay here. There's nothing we can do about it. And I'm going to suggest to you that we may ultimately come to admire these frogs. In any event, the Geologic Survey is doing a study of amphibian diseases. And the Geologic Survey actually hires biologists. You don't have to be a geologist. But in any event, her interest was in capturing green frog larvae to study for diseases. Next slide. A view of another one of the series of ponds on Barber Cutoff. You can see the drainage pipe up here on the right leading to the next pond. Next slide. There's also a possibility for, I'm on the wrong page here. There's also a possibility of regenerating, restoring ponds, restoring wetlands that used to be there. North Kitsap Heritage Park stewards conceived of the idea, did almost all of the work of constructing this ponded area. We took out a haul road, you can see it on the far side, an old timber haul road. We took out the haul road and reconfigured the land so that the water, which was flowing underground through long abandoned culverts, would rise to the surface again. It wouldn't be drained away. We've already seen amphibians breeding in these ponds. A lot of work by a dedicated group of people, and we were all fired shortly following this restoration. All right, what I really want to get to here are the private constructed ponds, which I have seen all over North Kitsap. I've been invited and have visited about a half a dozen of them. Next slide, please. These were my first field research assistants. This is my daughter Robin and my son Josh. I have two generations of children, two born in the 60s, two born in the 90s. These were the two born in the 60s. I was going to graduate school when they were young, and they helped out in my field research. This is a pond in which we studied amphibian population dynamics. Robin in particular developed a love of and an appreciation for the decline in amphibians, and so when she became an adult, she embraced saving amphibians in a real big way, as I'll show you. Next slide. Robin and her then husband were living in Orlando, Florida. They were concrete contractors. They made some money. We decided to get everybody in the family back together. A few of us were already in Kitsap County, and everybody else came and moved out here. They moved out here and bought 20 acres in Kingston, and among other things, built a home, built ponds, and raised two daughters, which I'll talk about in a moment. You see in the distance here, a borrow pit, typical of construction practices hereabout. I'm standing where the house is going to be built. This is downhill toward that borrow pit, and so the drainage is downhill. They took advantage of that, and the rain that landed on the roof, the gutters, all of that fed into this drainage area down toward this borrow pit. Next slide. You can see the initial dirt moving. It's the same area. By the way, keep your eye on this tree over here to the left. This tree reappears. It was in the previous slide, and it will reappear several times. Here's the borrow pit, relatively small originally. You can see they've built up the berm, have put in other berms, and we now have a circuitous route by which the water gets there. Riffles and runs. If you're going to build a pond, riffles and runs. Riffles to have some moving water, and pools to collect the water to let it pool, literally. Next slide. To add habitat variability and visual interest, they aligned a lot of it with local rocks, also some wood in the area in order to again create habitat variability, different kinds of habitats for different sorts of organisms. Her goal was not just to attract amphibians, it was to attract all of the invertebrates that use these ponds as well. Pollinators, significant visitors to these kinds of ponds. The big pond, the main pond, this curves around like this. In the main pond, you can see a little bit over here, and most of it is to the left of this evergreen. Next slide. Sorry if I tried to get somebody. This is about a year later. Same view, about a year later. You can see it is readily filled with water. A small amount of grass has been planted around just to stabilize the soil to prevent the siltation of this pond. It has actually worked quite well. These intermediate ponds and the main pond were lined with a substance called bentonite. It's a clay mineral, non-toxic to wildlife, non-toxic to your pets, non-toxic to your kid if he wants to swim in it. But it seals the bottom. It's a clay mineral that seals the bottom. You don't have to line it with plastic. You don't have to worry about the fact that we have sandy soils around here. The object is to retain the water, and so you got to seal the bottom somehow. And in this case, it was bentonite. Next, please. Flip the other way. Yeah, there we go. There was a small cabin on the property. Their house was built upstream, up to the left in this photograph. But you can see the size of this pond. Here's a rope swing. Their daughters were able to swing on that rope swing and swim in this pond. 4 feet deep, sloped banks, about 30 by 40 feet. So it's a fairly good sized pond. It didn't need to be that big, but it is that big and it works very well. Next slide. Here's this same tree, quite a bit bigger than it used to be. And here is the original borrow pit. This is a locust limb. This will factor in here in a moment. This is a locust tree that fell across it. Where I come from, if you're raising fish in a pond, you don't let trees fall in it. You don't let wood sit in it. There are all sorts of reasons for that. But it's not appropriate if you want to have real wildlife, terrestrial wildlife, come and visit your pond. Next slide. One of the values of building a pond is educational. I pointed out that I have 2 granddaughters living here, living here. And one of them was in a science class in, I think it was junior high school. And we decided to construct, she was interested in amphibians. Everybody in my family has been beat into submission in terms of amphibians. But in any event, Rachel and I, my granddaughter, and I just used whatever we could find to construct a drift fence with drop traps. These white cans here are drop traps. You can see there's one on the outside, one on the inside, one on the outside, and there's another one on the inside. The purpose of this fence is to interrupt the migratory journey, just like the silt fence did. Only in this case, we have these drop traps. An amphibian trying to get to the pond encounters this obstruction, and like any obstruction, a rock, a tree, a fallen log, they walk around it to get to, they know where they're going. And in this case, they fall in the cans. Granddaughter comes out in the morning, identifies, counts, and notes the time. She's not trying to count how many breed in the pond, she's trying to determine the timing of the arrival of the adults and ultimately the exit of the juveniles that result. This study and some other things she did got her into Huxley College of the Environment, and she's a rabid environmentalist. If you, one of the real treasures, one of the real rewards of building this kind of pond and ultimately getting to see them are the critters that come to the pond. The harbingers, the real harbingers of spring. It's not birds, it's amphibians that are the real harbingers of spring. This is the red-legged frog. You can see the red beneath its thighs right here. This is the one you hear in the early spring. Rah, rah. A low-pitched, not very loud call. Next slide. This is another common frog we have in the area. Referred to as the Northwest Pacific tree. It's a tree frog, sometimes referred to as chorus frogs because of their ability to make a lot of noise. This is the loud frog. This is the one that Hollywood has recorded in order to have creepy jungle sounds in their horror movies. Loud frog, characteristically identified by the expanded toe clips. This is a tree frog. That implies that it climbs. It can climb up your windows. And everybody assumed that those were little suction cups on the feet. Very recent research has shown that they produce a short-lived adhesive. Very much of interest in the world of industrial development of adhesives. This is a short-lived adhesive that the frog can turn on or turn off, depending on what it's doing. It's an amazing animal. Next slide. This is our big salamander, Ambystoma gracile. It's about 7, when I refer to a 7-inch animal, this is one of those 7-inch animals. All brown, it's hard to see it in this photograph, but has a built-in eternal smile. It makes you grin when you look into the face of one of these. The Northwest salamander. Next. This is its cousin. By the way, both of these, the previous one and this one, is the long-toed salamander. Both of these are referred to as mole salamanders. That's an informal name. But they're referred to as mole salamanders because they use the burrows. They live in the burrows of small mammals and the like. You want to find them? Lift up a tree trunk. They're quite often hidden away very, very well. This is the long-toed salamander, and again, you can't see it, but it has an especially long toe on each hind foot. You can tell it from the previous one, however, because of this yellow or tan dorsal stripe. Very interesting, very beautiful animal. Next. This is the one you've already seen, the rough-spotted newt, rough-skinned newt. Newts are a wonderful animal. These are toxic to predators. If a predator eats this animal, it won't eat another one. Not because it harms it, but it's an unpleasant experience. There's a wonderful piece of film out of the late 50s, early 60s of a blue jay having just eaten a small salamander sitting on a limb, puking its guts out. It's actually a very funny piece of film, but illustrates the point that that bluebird never again ate a salamander. One of the results of this is that these are very bold animals. I hesitate in polite company to call them ballsy, but that's what they are. They will walk across your lawn. They know they're toxic. They're not going to be bothered by the predators, and so they'll walk your lawn in the middle of the day. Next. If you get real, hit it again. If you get real lucky, the local bald eagle will come and take a bath in your constructed pond. In this case, in the shallow part of the pond, on that locust limb I pointed out earlier. Watch this bird. This is a cell phone telephoto video, so it's not real good, but it illustrates the point. There he goes. Sitting there so you can adore him. Last slide. Thank you for you guys. Fill the pond. Go home and fill the pond. They don't have to be that big.
Wait.
Go ahead.
I have 2 clawfoot bathtubs in my backyard that I've turned into ponds.
Yep.
And I have red-legged frogs that are coming regularly.
Excellent.
And I got a glob of the northwestern salamander eggs, and they hatched out in there last year. And at least 3
All right.
of them have overwintered. They're about like that
Yeah.
now. And I'm just wanting to create more life for them there. And I'm wondering, in such a small area, what kind of things can I add that will be really beneficial for them? I've got gobs of birds coming and taking baths there, and the squirrels take baths
Yeah.
there, and a bear came and drank out of there last year. But those bathtub ponds are great because I'm old and they're at a level that I can get down to.
I'm the oldest person in this room, and I'll guarantee you that what you're doing is the right thing. I grew up in the Midwest, and seeing salamander larvae and frog tadpoles in horse troughs is a very common thing. They will use any good body of water. That pond that you saw my son and daughter standing next to, we kept larvae in that pond in order to introduce them into the cages that we were loading at that point in time. I've had bullfrogs adopt the horse trough, sitting on the edge, yelling like crazy, looking for a female bullfrog. They will reproduce in any body of water that lasts long enough. That's the crucial issue. Is it going to be there when their larvae need to metamorphose into juvenile frogs and leave the pond? Almost anything that you fill with water outdoors of some reasonable size, as you point out, will attract amphibians. The coolest part about building ponds is that you build it and they will come. Apologies to the movie by the...
I have a concern
The baseball,
about
yes.
the pond that's, the tub that's holding the salamander Fs or whatever they are. When they get big enough and leave, the pond is right against like a wooden deck. There's steps up the deck, but I'm concerned. I mean, do I need to make some ramps off of that bathtub?
Put an attractive stick in there.
Yeah, okay.
Baseball bat diameter stick. They'll find their way to that and exit. Keep it full.
Well, exit's not what I'm worried about. It's how do they get back into it if they want to come back and mate in that pond?
Do the same thing. Craft some rocks, some sticks, whatever you can find to create sort of a gentle slope up to the pond. I can't tell you how they know the water is in there when they can't see it, but I'll guarantee you that they know. I've seen too many times what looks like an impossible place for a frog or a salamander to get, and they're full of eggs, full of larvae, and ultimately produce juveniles.
So around here, at what time like right now, are the red-legged frogs gonna start laying eggs, and are the salamanders and the little guys?
This is a complicated question to answer because of global warming. You all been here probably long enough to see. The first time I lived out here was in '76. It rained all the time. The chilly, hilly 100, you rode in the rain. When the danger of frost is gone, then they're going to emerge. They can't deal with frost, but they're very good at weather, at thinking about weather, and they will come. I would start looking normally here I start looking for frogs and salamanders, listening for frogs. Salamanders, of course, are quiet. But listening for frogs in early March, late February, early March. I mean, we're getting right to it right now, and you've all seen how beautiful the weather is. A little bit of rain and you're going to start hearing frogs. I've heard from some people they've already heard frogs calling this year.
It's above 40 degrees. When it's above 40 degrees.
Yeah, it's
There's
interesting.
there's a classic math problem.
Yeah, well, listen, that pond that my son and daughter, my first generation of children were standing next to, our rule of thumb was when the water temperature reached 9 degrees C, early mid-40s, then you could expect amphibians to be laying their eggs. Yeah, it doesn't have to be real warm. Yes?
I do egg mass surveys in Kitsap County, and this is the earliest that we've ever found red-legged frogs in our retention pond. They were laying last week.
I believe that, yeah. You're not the first person I've heard that from. I've heard other people talking about it calling. If they're calling, the next day you're going to see eggs. And by the way, I don't have a photograph of it, but if you have a pond and you're wondering if the salamanders got there last night, look for spermatophores. On the bottom, on the leaf litter, will be what look like little tiny mushrooms, about a ½ inch tall, with a little white glob on top. Those two salamanders that you saw do a nuptial dance with their mates, turns her on, turns him on. He deposits a spermatophore, she comes along and picks up the spermatophore. They have internal fertilization. You know, significant for an amphibian. Frogs don't do that. And internal fertilization, well, there are a couple, but internal fertilization, she then abandons him and goes and finds a spot where she wants to deposit the eggs. Not all amphibians do it that way. Usually it's a communal effort. A male frog will find a female frog before they get to the pond. The female is usually bigger because she's grabbing full of eggs. He'll grab onto her in what we call amplexus, and then she's got to haul his sorry ass all the way to the pond in order to fertilize the eggs as she is depositing them. There's all sorts of variants on this. I saw something.
That's another class.
Yes.
How long is long enough if I have a seasonal wetland in my back 40? How long do I need to, so if we have an early drought summer, for example?
That's a problem. That is a problem. Generally, July and August, they will start to emerge. The trigger for metamorphosis, the trigger to get those larvae to leave the pond is, A, the pond is getting warmer because it's getting shallower, and the food is running out. That triggers metamorphosis. So some years they'll come out as big juveniles, other years they'll come out as relatively tiny juveniles because the pond tended to dry early. That's a problem. If you have a pond, a constructed pond such as my daughter does, they supplement the water occasionally when it's really dry. There's nothing wrong with doing that.
Well, I want to thank you, Tom, for your passion.
Thank you all.